good evening. You're watching India Sense. I'm Gauri Dwivedi. This is your show that gets you all the news and views that matters to global Indians. But first up, the headlines as always. 1 month on since the horrific Pahalgam terror attack, with IMF doling out loans to Pakistan, India questions how can the world continue to fund a state where terror is a state policy. As the Trump versus Harvard showdown escalates, the fate of nearly 800 Indian students hangs in balance with tougher visa norms, poor placements, an uncertain future. Is the coveted Ivy League dream all but over? Yunus provokes, leans towards Beijing. India acts. Kaladan project to link the northeast with mainland India through Sitwe port. After 10 years of exploiting Pakistani resources with one-sided contracts, China is all set to now expand its CPEC tentacles into Afghanistan. The question is, will the world stop Kabul from falling into a debt trap? A fortnight after India's Desi drones struck Pakistani air bases with precision, we decode how Operation Sindoor is the catalyst for the UAV sector to boom in India. One month on, and the cries of 26 innocent souls still echo unanswered. A retaliatory 25-minute precision strike, a 4-day border flare-up, and Operation Sindoor's diplomatic domino. Yet the world's conscience seems stuck in limbo and slumber. But now India's patience has run its course. Pakistan may think it can sweep terror under the rug, but India is turning up the heat, and this time on the international stage. Government sources confirm that New Delhi is set to push the Financial Action Task Force, the global watchdog on dirty money and dark networks, to bring Pakistan back to its infamous grey list. It was there. It was there for some time, twice actually, and then it got out. It got out because of China's support. Islamabad has for long been able to play both sides, convincing the world that it is acting on terror when it's actually fermenting. When even as missiles flew and innocent Indian lives fell, the IMF handed Islamabad a bailout package in the middle of that war. And during a near-war situation, this happened. Delhi is livid, and sources say it has conveyed its deepest disappointments to the IMF loud and clear. But it doesn't stop there. India will oppose any fresh World Bank funding to Pakistan. The message is clear that it cannot allow more funding to go to a country where all finances seem to be headed towards perpetuating the terror infrastructure. Pakistan as a country has had a long history of financial mismanagement. Grey-listed in 2008, again in 2012, again in 2018, and barely off the list finally in 2022. Every time there's promise of reform, but what comes out is terror. With 11 new conditions that have been slapped by the IMF just last week, even the money lenders smell the rot. Terror cannot be whitewashed with loans. It's time to call a spade and grey-list the enabler. For peace to prevail, the world must stop dancing to Pakistan's tune, because when terror is bankrolled, blood is the only currency. When Ukraine's Bayraktars soared and sank the mighty Russian cruiser Moskva, the world saw the new kings of combat. That's the drones. Russia hit back with Shahids and FPVs. Steel met silicon. Precision replaced brute force. And across the Himalayas, India watched closely, and it moved slowly and swiftly. What happened? This story is best told with this report.
On May 7th, India unleashed a wave of precision aerial strikes. 9 enemy targets hit without crossing a single inch. On May 8th, over 300 incoming drones were neutralized without a glitch or even a scratch. Operation Sindoor was India's unmanned awakening. But it did not happen overnight. This was decades in the making. It was backed by vision, policy, and a booming domestic defense industry. With indigenous defense exports already topping 24,000 crore rupees and headed for 50,000 crore rupees in the next 5 years by 2029, India's drone ecosystem isn't just flying, it's flying indigenous. From Bengaluru's Alpha design with Sky Strikers to Idea Forge's ISRIs, this is a story written in silicon and soldier. Over 550 drone companies, more than 5,500 certified pilots, and a goal to be the world's drone hub by 2030. Catalyzed by a tailor-made scheme with 120 crore rupees in incentives and reinforced by a ban on imported drones, India is building combat-ready skies domestically. From AI-powered UCAVs to soldier-mounted anti-drone systems, India is preparing for the new frontier of conflict, one where precision matters as much as power.
Well, Operation Sindoor, viewers, was the spark. The engine is Make in India. And the payload? Well, a new generation of warriors, innovators and protectors. In the next war, those who command the skies will command victory. And there are no doubters after the success that India saw in Operation Sindoor. Is this the end of the Harvard dream for many in India? Well, there are doubts amidst the Trump government's decision to end Harvard's ability to enroll international students. The move will hit 6,700 international students in America's oldest university. Harvard has vowed to take all legal recourse. In fact, it has already done so as we speak. That's flashing on your screens right now. That this is a fight that is going to go all the way to the courts. But the point is, what happens to the Indian students? There are hundreds of them. What happens to their degrees? What happens to their visas? What happens to the loans that they have taken in the hope that they will get a degree and probably work towards a better future? And this, viewers, is probably when we ask that, are we now at an inflection point where Indians will reevaluate that when it comes to international education, shrinking work opportunities, tougher visa norms, and a global economy that's throwing up fewer jobs will make many reassess whether it's all worth it? Which brings me to ask that, is the Ivy League dream all but over? On your screens are some of those numbers. 788 students are now stuck in limbo in Harvard. But that's not all. Placements have gone down, whether in Harvard or in Stanford. The number of people who are being able to get a job has actually shrunk, both in Harvard and in Stanford, whether in 2023 or in 2024. That number is actually going down, which brings many to ask that, are we reaching a point where with lesser jobs, tougher visa norms, Indians will now be forced to look at, or will have to reevaluate, are they really better off when they look to go overseas? Or is it time to then evaluate opportunities back home? We haven't heard the last of this. This is a story that we're going to keep coming back to. But one thing is clear, that India and Indians add to the American economy. They add to the growth of the Indian economy. They punch above their weight. And when they stand to be at the losing end of a proposition, they reevaluate. And when they do, it is the host country that's worse off. For decades, India gave Dhaka a seat at the table. Concessions, transit, trade, a lifeline through Bangladesh. In the hope of friendship, that goodwill has been shattered when interim leader Muhammad Yunus declared Northeast India landlocked. He didn't just mock India, he tried to isolate its own states. But India is not cornered. India is breaking free. And the answer lies not in Chattogram, but across the bay at Sitwe. India has built its own corridor to the northeast, slicing through Meghalaya, Mizoram and Myanmar. The Kaladan multimodal project is no longer a concept, it is India's new artery, cutting out the unreliable and cutting down dependence. From Kolkata to Aizawl in under 4 days, 1,000 kilometers saved. The path, well, sea to river to road. And all sovereign, no strings, no handouts, no Dhaka. In fact, with Sitwe port operational, India's northeast is no longer blocked. It's connected, it's powered. And that map is telling you just how much of a game changer this is going to be. Well, Bangladesh's arrogance has backfired. India doesn't beg, it builds. It's building Sitwe, and it is now a symbol of that defiance. While Dhaka dances to Beijing's tune, India writes its own script with steel, stone and strategy. This isn't just a corridor, viewers, it's declaration. Northeast India is no longer India's Achilles heel. It's becoming India's front foot. The message to Dhaka is clear. We gave you the option, you chose China, now we chose Sitwe. Well, viewers, on that note, we slip into a very short break. We come back on the other side with lots more. Stay with us. Welcome back, viewers. They say you cannot have your cake and eat it too, but Pakistan seems to defy that logic, begging the world for handouts while stocking up on bombs and bullets. As 11 million citizens stare at empty plates, Islamabad chooses power over people, and once again, international aid becomes a loaded gun pointed at peace. Take a look. Pakistan's economy is gasping for breath. Inflation is soaring, reserves are scraping the bottom of the barrel. While 11 million people face severe hunger across flood-hit districts, Islamabad is signing arms deals with Beijing. And yet, Islamabad has $7 billion earmarked for defense in 2025. The story is not new. Since 2016, over a quarter of Pakistan's population has been stuck in a food crisis. Children are born underweight, mothers eat less so their kids can eat at all. We are not saying this, the United Nations is. Islamabad doesn't need dollars to stay armed. It needs China. Over 80% of Pakistan's weapons come from Beijing on credit. Cheap, defective and dangerous. Fighter jets, drones, warships, all from China. Military spending untouched, even during economic collapse. And the result? The Chinese-made HQ-9 failed to protect Pakistan during India's Operation Sindoor. Indian missiles hit terror bases with surgical precision. Pakistan's Chinese J-10C jets never made it past the runway. Former Ambassador Hussain Haqqani said it best. South Korea got $15 billion and built an economy. Pakistan got $55 billion and built delusions. As Pakistan digs itself into deeper debt, the world keeps footing the bill for its war obsession. And the poor, they're left to eat shadows. The man who understands Pakistan probably the best, Ambassador Ajay Bisaria, on what all is happening in Pakistan at a time when they lost a war, they don't have money to feed their people. But what is the Army General doing? Well, he's promoting himself. Listen in to what Ambassador Bisaria had to say about what all is happening in Pakistan. We're talking 1 month after the Pahalgam terror attack took place. As far as Pakistan is concerned, no action has been taken. Instead, all that they've done is they've promoted their general, who's now a field marshal. That's all that Pakistan has done so far.
I think what it demonstrates is that all this action, right from Pahalgam to now, was about Asim Munir and his personal objective of regime consolidation. Because he was weak before he went into this episode, and he's emerged stronger. He's emerged as a field marshal, and he has managed to now increase in his view or enhance the legitimacy and credibility of his own position and that of the army. And I think it's bad for the people of Pakistan, it's bad for Pakistan, but it's good for Asim Munir personally.
In fact, another top voice on the show joining me is former US National Security Advisor, Ambassador John Bolton, to talk on what all is Trump doing when it comes to Harvard, national security, and the latest as far as the Trump playbook is concerned. Ambassador Bolton, thank you so much for speaking to me on NDTV. Let me start by asking you, drastic measures have been taken against Harvard due to national security concerns. How do you read these measures and their import?
Well, it's important to know, I think Harvard has brought suit this morning, America time, against its delisting as a place where foreign student visa holders can attend. This got started with an administration effort to deal with failure of universities to take steps against anti-Semitism on their campuses and the dangers that Jewish students and others were facing. But to say it's gotten out of control would be an understatement. I'm a Yale graduate myself, so I'm not a fan of Harvard. But they're now trying to affect the entire university, having started out with a legitimate basis of concern about anti-Semitism and the civil rights violations that entailed, to something much broader. I think it's ultimately very harmful, certainly to Harvard, but I think to the United States as well. We benefit in the United States from having foreign students. I mean, there's some that are obviously problems, but that doesn't mean that the vast bulk of them are, or that this kind of step is warranted.
This is a very important story because it impacts almost every country, because India itself sends about 800 international students to Harvard. So this has huge implications, but also it redefines the playbook, doesn't it? Because the Trump administration is saying, Ambassador Bolton, that there are concerns regarding Chinese presence on Harvard campuses, and which is the reason why they feel that they have to invoke those national security concerns.
Well, this is a good example of overreaching by the administration. I'm worried when our adversaries are able to take advantage of the U.S. educational system, and if there are specific countries that are a problem, then we ought to take steps to solve that problem. For example, for many years, Iran sent graduate students in mathematics and physics to American universities, potentially now contributors to the Iranian nuclear weapons program. So there's certainly reason here to screen people when they ask for visas for the United States. Every country does that. We're no exception.
Indeed.
But I've also found over the years, particularly students who come to the United States, we don't have a propaganda campaign when students come. They see the U.S., they see the good, the bad, and the ugly. Nonetheless, most are convinced that we have a system that bears evidence.
Right.
So I would be very upset about a program that essentially kept more students out, kept more foreign students out, which is the direction the administration seems to be going.
But the fact that there was the horrific killing of the two Israelis in Washington, D.C., they were embassy staffers, does that further the Trump government's argument about anti-Semitism being on the rise in America?
Well, I think it's a terrible tragedy, and particularly coming in Washington concerns everybody, the families especially. The person arrested, who basically confessed on the scene that he had done it, appears to be an American citizen from Chicago, an extreme leftist, from what people can tell from his social media postings. And it's evidence that, unfortunately, anti-Semitism occurs across the political spectrum. So it is a rising problem in the U.S. and Europe and other places as well, and it will increase concerns.
Sir, which brings me to ask you that as the former NSA, how do you see that particular instance, that shooting instance, probably affecting Trump administration's view and approach regarding Israel as well as the Gaza conflict?
I think a lot will depend on whether the shooter was acting on his own, whether it was just ideological motivations. Did he have a network supporting him? Were there others involved? Were they foreign in some connection? But Americans generally are very sympathetic to Israel, very supportive of their efforts to escape terrorism. We were attacked on 9/11, as India has been attacked many times by terrorists. So I think this will move most Americans to say to more strongly support Israel.
All right, so we leave it there. Thank you so much for speaking to me on India Sense, a story that we're going to keep revisiting simply because it impacts so many Indian students, Indian families here. All right, let's now quickly get in some of the world views that are coming in. First up, Donald Trump met with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa in what became a diplomatic flashpoint. The reason: Trump expressed deep concern over the treatment of South Africa's white minority, just 7.3% of the population. He went so far as to share videos, issue warnings, and make it a headline. But here's the glaring question: where is that same moral urgency when it comes to the 9% of Bangladesh's population that is Hindu or some other minority communities? Instead, what do we see? On 24th of March, in fact, the US government conducted joint military drills with Bangladesh. It's time global powers stop cherry-picking whose human rights matter, because injustice anywhere, whether it's in Africa or in South Asia, should be condemned everywhere. Silence, after all, is complicity. All right, on that note, it's a wrap on this edition of India Sense. Thanks so very much for watching.